Rugby.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the My Life in Rugby interview series as we start a busy week with a big interview. A little over 15 years ago, a record-breaking crowd swarmed into Croke Park to watch two Irish rivals do battle. But for a change, it was in rugby. All this week, we will look at the mouth-watering fixture, and our next interviewee not only featured that day, but was one of many donning red, but left feeling what if. Not just myself, but the man who's sitting across from me here on this Zoom call. Joining me to look back at the stellar career with Munster and Ireland is former back row turned pundit Alan Quinlan. Alan, it is great to have you on. How's things?
Very good, Kellan. I don't get asked to do podcasts about my career much anymore, or interviews about that. It's been a while, but no, it's nice to be on and to be able to chat to you.
It's good to have you on. Most people, I suppose, would be most familiar with your current work at this stage with the punditry and all that. You're back with Premier Sports and Virgin Media have the Autumn Nation series coming in a couple of weeks. Are you delighted to kind of get back into the swing of things, back behind the microphone?
Yeah, for sure. I think I count myself lucky that I can still be a part of a lot of big games and be still very close to rugby in a sense that I'm not coaching. I do some coaching um, in my son's school and with sometimes I help out other teams here and there. Um, but when I retired, I think it wasn't really a plan to go straight into media and try and carve out a career in that. My initial plan was to maybe travel for a little bit, and I certainly was very much interested in coaching and stuff. So it all kind of just happened very quickly. When I retired, I went to the World Cup in 2011 and did the commentary there for ITV at the time. And then when I came home, um, Sky Sports were doing the Heineken Cup as it was called back then. So I started doing lots of matches for Sky, and then they did the old, I don't know what it was even called back then. Was it the Pro 14 or was it
Well,
uh,
I think I have no
the
idea.
Celtic
I think it was
League
Pro
or
12 at the time, yeah.
Pro 12 or Celtic League or whatever it was? And so I was doing games every week, and I ended up writing for the Irish Times a piece there and doing lots of radio pieces and stuff. And so very quickly, um, I was kind of earning money for working in the media, and it was a whole new career. It takes a lot of time to understand how it works and to get any sort of confidence in that. But I really enjoyed it, and it was I didn't really have a long-term plan of what I would do, but it just kind of rolled in from one year to the next, and I'm still doing it, and it's really enjoyable. I get excited about preparing for matches and the intrigue of doing the notes and doing the preparation for commentaries and stuff like that. And I find it stimulating. I find it enjoyable. Not everybody maybe likes to hear my voice, or at times you get critiqued about, you know, maybe being too negative or favouring Munster or Leinster or favouring one of the provinces over another and stuff like that. But no, it's been very enjoyable, and I count myself very lucky to be able to call matches and to be, as I said, involved in the game. Albeit it's not a coaching role. A lot of my teammates would have been close friends, would have been involved in coaching and are still involved in the game. Look at Rog and Paul, um, their involvements at the top end. And it's not for everyone. I think coaching or even doing media stuff is not for everybody. Some people dip in and out of it. Um, and I'm on off the ball a lot as well, and that's been probably 8 years now, a regular contributor there to off the ball. So it gives me a chance also to talk to people, and not just in rugby, but interview other people in sports, and uh, I always would have had a real intrigue about the mental approach of people to how they prepare and how they set their goals and how they perform under pressure and stuff like that. So it is a different world nowadays with social media for people, sports people, you know, amateur GA people who have great respect for. I came from a GA background. Um, just the pressures that are on them and the judgments and the instant sort of critiquing of performances is can be tricky for sports people. But I've always loved sport, and I'm still involved in it, and I count myself very lucky.
Yeah, it's definitely a great point you made there about the pressure, because I spoke to Ryan Nugent, who you'd have worked alongside earlier on the year, and he speaks about, the pressure of the big games. You do feel that kind of adrenaline rush get to you, I suppose, because it's live. It mightn't be the same physically in terms of playing a match, but it's still live TV. There's still a pressure to it, I suppose.
It is, and it's reactive analysis, really. You're talking about something that's happening straight away, right in front of you. If you're in studio, you have time to reflect, and you're watching the game in the studio, or you're at the game watching it on a monitor, and you then have half time, and you're asked questions about certain incidents. You have time to kind of share your thoughts with, um, fellow player who's there on the panel with you. Commentary is tricky, and it's enjoyable, and I suppose what I've learned is you're not going to please everybody, but because you're going into people's sitting rooms essentially, and you don't want to over talk, and sometimes I do get critiqued, and it's something I'm conscious of. Maybe being a bit too negative, particularly on Ireland's performances. People would say, "Oh, I'm being very negative," and sometimes I watch the games as if I'm standing on the sidelines, talking to a fellow player, kind of saying, "Well, the lineout was bad there. Or why did we throw it to the back? Or should have been thrown to the front? We should have kicked that." And I think there's always a danger that you can start doing that in commentary. But you can't. You're not really supposed to analyze. You're supposed to kind of talk through what's what the viewer is seeing, really. And there is pressure with it, yeah, but it's good pressure, and it's enjoyable. And by and large, I get really good feedback. And I think when the Munster stuff has been tricky, to be honest, because I when you play for a province for so long and had such wonderful memories and joyful moments throughout the years, and then you're in a position when you retire, and you kind of have to give honest appraisal about performances. And Munster's, since I retired, their run and their success wasn't always there. They won a trophy in 2023. The last time was 2011, so there was a bit of a barren period from challenging from trophies. We were very lucky in my generation, and people often ask about players, why didn't certain guys leave, or did I ever consider leaving? And you're playing for your hometown club essentially, and every year you're in with a crack of maybe challenging for trophies. And some brilliant players have played in the last 10, 15 years for Munster, you know, and obviously winning in 2023 or 2023. Um, it was really special for Munster fans, for the players, for Stephen Archer, Conor Murray, Keith Earls, um, players who were Peter O'Mahony, who were there when I played, and they lived through all that pressure and the disappointments of semi-final losses, and not making playoffs and things like that. And the added pressure of playing for Munster as well, and the expectation. Sometimes I always said it's unfair, when you win in European Cups, and then there's an expectation. So, and then when you're kind of have to give appraisal, everybody's not pleased about that, particularly people and that you're involved in. But I can always say that I've never in my career of commentating or doing analysis of Munster, I've never wanted anything but success for them. It was never a case of, oh, maybe if this current group or start winning trophies and stuff, that our legacy or something will be forgotten about. Far from it. 2023 in Cape Town is one of the highlights of me being an ex-Munster player, or even a player. It's right up there with some of Munster's greatest achievements, because of the way they did it. Going away in the quarterfinal, semi-final, and final, and to win that trophy was really special. So yeah, I always want Munster to win. You've got to try and separate yourself from that when you're doing commentaries. And I will be doing the Leinster Munster game in Croke Park. So I've got to try and find a way of being impartial and as best I can. But it's yeah, it never leaves you. I'll always be very proud to have played for Munster and to have had the opportunities I had as a player.
No, absolutely. And look, I think the modern discourse of things, you'll never please everyone. It's never been more true than it is now. But as you said, you have to remain professional, you have to remain partial. That's all a part of it. I do want to touch on Munster because it's where you played most of your career, all your club career, apart from AIL, of course. And just we're going to start with the glory days, the 2000s. Four Heineken Club finals, 2 wins, 2 losses, miracle match, away wins in England and France and all corners of the continent. What was it about that squad, do you think, that kind of it didn't just catapult the club to a successful era, but they were the envy of the rugby world almost?
Yeah, it was very special for us as players because the core group of that kind of successful era would have been started out in 1997, 98. Some came a little bit later, but the vast majority of us probably some played for 15 years together, some played for 10, 12. The vast majority would have 10, 12 years together. So we created a great bond. We became really good friends. I think around that early period in the late 90s, we were still playing for our clubs and playing for Munster. And there was a lot of change. The European Cup came in 95, 96. Um, the we suddenly started playing, obviously when the Celtic League came in, we were taken away from our clubs. So it was a lot of change there and a lot of stuff for young players to get used to. Um, like you talk about Leinster Munster rivalries, but the rivalries we had in the AIL, Shannon, Garryowen, and Limerick, I remember starting out training and the Garryowen lads not liking Shannon, well, Shannon and Garryowen, big rivalry in Limerick, and a little bit of an edge between the two groups, and one group doing their fitness away from us and all that kind of stuff, and vice versa. And then we play an AIL game at the weekends, and we'd be kind of kill each other. Um, Same with Shannon Cork Con or whatever. So it was a really different time in a sense that we were still very much embedded in our clubs and very proud to, the success I would have had with Shannon was just, I was so lucky. I came in from Clonwilliam and Tipperary and started playing 20s with Shannon, then went down to the senior team. And I always say that was a great grounding for me. Playing the AIL back then, you know, 10, 12,000 people packed out in Greenfields or Duradoyle or Thomond Park, going down to Temple Hill in Cork, playing Cork Con, playing the Senior Cup, all that stuff. It was tough. It was enjoyable, and there was skin and hair flying. It was very rare you'd see a touch judge putting up a flag for a bit of rucking or something like that, and it was physical, but it was great. It was enjoyable, and we were involved in lots of changes. So the rivalries within Munster in the clubs, um, that had to kind of, and it did change where we became much more trusting of each other, and we became, when you start training with guys on a regular basis, and then your team now is Munster. It was very difficult for the clubs because, particularly in Shannon, we had, load of internationals, and Shannon were so proud of like any club would be of having new internationals. Your jersey and picture goes up on the wall, and suddenly these guys who came through your system or played for your team were not available for you. So that was a tricky time. And then um, it was Team Munster then really. And around 99, 2000, that final in Twickenham, that was the first time that kind of you go, wow, the crowd that were there in Twickenham, that even from Munster fans' point of view, the people who were very much embedded in their clubs, they all kind of started to go, well, oh, we can all come together. And it maybe comes from that GA, Tip playing Cork and Cork playing Clare, and the rivalries in the GA, even for the fans. And I experienced that growing up. And suddenly these guys, Cork and Clare people, are at a Munster match together. It isn't Cork and Clare anymore in Semple Stadium. it's now we're all supporting the one team and we're all together. So there was a lot of change around that, and for players and for fans. And it did affect the clubs as well. It was a difficult transition for clubs, and particularly, how strong the AIL was from, a spectator point of view and people going to matches. Suddenly a lot of people were going to Munster games and the clubs got forgotten a little bit. Um, did it have to happen in a sense for the professional game and all that stuff and moving with the times? Probably. Um, but it was, like someone, Ronan and myself, would have, you know, when you're a back row forward and Shannon are playing Cork Con and you have an out half who's come through the school system and has this kind of reputation of being really brilliant player and all that stuff, you're gonna, your job is to try and unsettle the out half and the halfbacks and stuff. And I was always trying to get at Rog and chase him down and stuff like that. And, then we'd play a game at the weekend, and then we'd be in training with Munster together on Monday or Tuesday. So it was kind of a little bit standoffish for a while, or, with David Wallace playing with Gary Owen, directly playing opposite each other, and everyone trying to do the best for their clubs. And then suddenly we're together. So my point here is that took a little bit of time and change. And I didn't hit it off at the best with Rog at the start. And we became so close then. And it was the same as all the players, those kind of club rivalries. They weren't they weren't important. That was kind of ingrained into us. And we started to spend more time with each other, obviously in training, but obviously outside of training then as well. We would socialize together and spend time. And, every single player in that group would have had their own friends, because we would have come from through our own school systems and from our own areas. You would have your own close personal friends, but we all became great friends. And it's special. It's time flies, Kaelan, and it's looking back on it. But we still have a group that we meet fairly regularly. We have a WhatsApp group that we all connect on all the time. There's loads of slagging on that, and your time has flown by, really. So, and it started a journey in a bond where we had to go to war together, and we started believing that we could, win things, not just, win a big game at Thomond Park and have a big night out and be kind of local heroes. It was all about how can we be more ambitious, and how can we get fitter and embrace professionalism and become stronger mentally and physically and actually compete and fulfill our potential. And, Declan Kidney was central to that in '97 when he took over, by, changing our mindset and trying to make us believe that we had to come together. And, Jerry Holland, he was our manager at the time, and, Jerry passed away a couple of years ago, and he would have been so close and so central to helping a lot of us as well. Brian O'Brien, who passed away as well, was involved as manager for a period of time too. So a lot of change, a lot of stuff that we didn't really have any clue about. But the one thing that kind of stands out for me was the ambition that was in the dressing room, and a kind of a cultural standard that was starting to be set around fitness and your behaviors off the field. Um, you know, the amateur era, and a lot of us would have kind of touched a little bit on that, but we were very lucky that, when rugby went professional in '95, that we were on a journey now of trying to understand what professionalism, what nutrition was. I remember those earlier days in UL, coming in after training and, eating deep fried chicken and chips and stuff, and eating crisps and drinking Coke and all that stuff that's not good nutrition for you after you do a weight session or a fitness session. And they're kind of treat stuff. Um, and understanding what calorie intake was all about. So, and how we push ourselves. John Langford came in 1999 from Australia, and he shamed us the way he could train and do fitness. He was laughing people when we do our 3K fitness tests, the intensity he did his weights at, all that kind of stuff. So I think we learned together as a group, and we started helping each other and pushing each other in training, and that kind of translated onto the field. People often ask me about the games that stand out, and I've always mentioned that Saracens away game in '99, 2000. A lot of people talk about the home game that got us out of the group and topped the group and um, ended up getting us a final that year. But the away game, which was the first game in November, very little. I think there was only the parents of the players that were over there. The game wasn't even live on TV. It was on Limerick Live 95 with Len Deneen, and it was a Sunday game. Nobody really got to see it, and it was an eerie kind of sense of no Munster fans there, and that was one of the ones that stands out where you could see and sense that there was something special happening here with the group. Obviously, lots of changes and players coming in and out, but the shift in the mindset, number one, which Declan Kidney was central to. Niall O'Donovan was the manager at the time as well. Niall O'Donovan was the forwards coach. He was brilliant with us as well. Um, so everybody was learning in a sense, but it was enjoyable. Was there some harsh lessons along the way, where we came up short at times? Yes. One of our goals around that period, or maybe 97, 98, 99, was winning France for the first time. It wasn't like win the European Cup, win the Interpros, but very quickly it started becoming a real goal of ours when we got to that final in 2000. Win the European Cup. Can we be the best team in Europe? And it took a few years in 2006 to finally get there, but yeah, and you create a natural bond. It wasn't false. We actually enjoyed each other's company and became really good friends, lifelong friends. So like I say, with the connections we have now, there's a special bond there that was created, and it was really enjoyable. And then, you know, we we went close for probably from that period in 2000 right up to 2011. We were always challenging thereabouts for a trophy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that camaraderie is a massive part of it. But just a point you made there about the IL, we've touched on it with Jack Carthy, Bernard Jackman, Zach Ward, yourself, and everyone. Despite the different eras, it's all about what this is. This is a great league to learn and to get match practice. But even for yourselves, like that led to the spirit that we got to see. That kind of passionate, that drive, that determination, because the AIL was so competitive. When you got to Europe, all you knew was kind of competition. I'll get on 2006 and 2008 in a minute, because that's obviously where you reach the summit. But you talk about that passion and things like that. There were so many incidents. There was so much kind of infighting for the sake of just getting a team up. Like there's a clip of you on Off the Ball talking about the Mr. X incident, for example. How I'm not going to ask how often were they, but if you want to just talk about that one and how they were kind of almost common practice to get you in the right headspace.
Yeah, I think we all came up with the mentality, which is not always correct, that to succeed you had to really get stuck in and be physical and nearly have a few rows in training and a bit of old school mentality. It did help because when you played in the AIL that time, I remember going to Greenfields for the first time playing young Munsters of Peter Clohessy, Ger Clohessy, Ger Earls, all these kind of guys that I would have went and watched in previous years when I wasn't playing senior with Shannon. Iconic players and real tough, hard guys, take no prisoners. So you kind of come up and suddenly you're on a field with these people and you go, wow, um, I've got to really be, get stuck in here and be hard, and it does harden you up a little bit. The game has changed, of course. Now it's not, there's no off the ball stuff. There's no kind of rucking anymore. There's no fellas. You don't get away with anything like that. But back in those days, if you went on the wrong side of a breakdown, you'd get shredded by three or four fellas rucking you out of it. Um, I'm not saying that was right, but that's just the way it was, and it was physical. There was no, people would. I think it was kind of a given and accepted. Um, Obviously, it's far better nowadays that you don't have any of that stuff going on, and um, but I think that when you play against those kind of players and you're in that setup, um, you learn pretty quickly that you've got to look after yourself and that it is physical. And the AIL was brilliant for that. It brings the kind of, but it's the determination, the passion that you have within yourself to try and come out and succeed and have success. So for me, playing with Shannon was like massive. It was I was playing in the All Ireland League and I was here playing these big games and um so I loved it and I was very lucky and you know that obviously went on and we played for Munster and started that journey there as well. So yeah, it was something that was really important. And I always talk about the volunteers and the people behind the scenes who give their life and soul to the clubs. And you know, I didn't come through the school system, so came through the club system. And I would always say the IL was really important for me. And I'd never, you know, I always tried over the years to really, you know, talk about the quality of games that are still there and you know the quality of players that play in the AIL. And it is another really important pathway for players to come through. Everybody develops at a different stage. Some guys are superstar schools players and they may not make it, and then some guys are not as recognized even in school or in club game in you know until they're 18, 19, 20, and it changes for them. And um, so that was a very important part of my development coming through that system. And you know, the AIL still has a very, very important role to play for players. And you know what? I've often spoken to AIL teams or players, and you may never be a professional rugby player, but I love to see guys who've you know, been with their clubs for a long period of time and they're so passionate about it and they never get to be professional, but they love going out with their club every week and they play out their whole careers there and it's a really integral, important part of their lives.
Oh, absolutely. It's great that it is flourishing again. You know, games are being streamed. There's more fans in attendance than, not ever before, but it is great to see it
Yeah, I think
bouncing back.
the Mr. X story and the arguments I had with Marcus in training, yeah, that stuff happened a lot. Um, you know, it was funny, you know, we had them all in line and training and the team was picked and Marcus and me were on opposite sides and, you know, there was a bit of pushing and shoving. Of course, it's different in training because you nowadays a lot of the professional sides will have a professional referee come in and ref a lot of their stuff, which is brilliant for the referees as well because they get up close and personal with players and the intensity sometimes in training is through the roof, particularly when you go full on against each other and the team is picked on a Tuesday or Wednesday and it's announced and there's guys disappointed or not starting. So there's a fair bit of tension there. So we would have had that. And, you know, Marcus, I remember there was a bit of a scuffle and I remember someone I felt a little punch going across the top of my head or maybe two and then Mr. X told me, informed me that it was Marcus, so I was kind of running after him in training for the next while then, and oh, he could give plenty of verbals back as well. And then after training, I end up calling him out after training in the car park, and thankfully nothing happened because I've always been great friends with Marcus. But we were two kind of tetchy personalities that could get fired up easy if you like, and yeah, we kind of squared off, but thankfully nothing ever happened to that. But you know, I remember loads of stuff, even with Paul, Paul O'Connell. Like Paul was tough as nails, and like if they're doing lineouts and you know against the pack of forwards, and you're coming in offside, or because you could sneak in and do a bit of offside and come in from the side of them all and slow them down, or grab somebody, hold somebody down when they're trying to get in the air. You're asking for a slap into the jaw there very easily, and it happens lots over the years, you know. I would have been always very close to Paul. We lived beside each other, and we always shared ideas about, you know, particularly lineouts and the way we played and want to attack and lineouts and defend and all that. But we've often had scuffles in training. There was one in the early days around 2000 and maybe 2000, 2001 in Thomond Park where it was full on maul. um, Two packs of forwards going at each other. You pick your three lineouts, the opposition defend, and vice versa. And this big melee of a scrap broke out. And I remember Niall O'Donovan at the time, and it was all the boys often spoke about it that he just sat back, watched us all beating the heads off each other, and said, "That's a great training session now. That's exactly what we need for the weekend." And at one point, Peter Classie and Des Classie were boxing the heads off each other. So you two brothers on the opposite sides fighting. So it was, yeah, that happened a lot. It happened fairly regular, not every week, but you'd always have some bit of a bit of a narky kind of a scenario. Someone might follow through with a tackle in the team run or something, and when it's supposed to be non-contact. So I'm sure every rugby team can recount different stories at all levels of players arguing and fighting. Yeah, it was all part and parcel of it. Maybe I don't know if it happens as much anymore, but you'd still have a heated kind of situations, I think, particularly if you have a team picked on start of the week and the subs and the extended squad who are going up against them, they're trying to lay down a marker as well.
Yeah, no, and maybe without those scuffles, we don't see the moments where, you think of miracle match, you think of that Saracens game you referenced. It literally came down to the will to get the job done and that kind of fight and that grit was instilled in training, which isn't always the case, I suppose. And I want to touch on 06, 08, because look, Munster win the Heineken Cup, second Irish team to do it. Of course, Ulster did it in 99, first Irish team to win 2 titles. 2006, you were a replacement. 2008, you were named player of the match. It's kind of a strange one in that regard. But is there any comparison? Because I think for most fans, they look at 06 was special. 08 was arguably a better team, potentially. 06 might have been the end of that generation. 08 was its own. Do you feel like there's differences between it, or is it just unbelievable success and joy and pride, and that's the only way you look at it?
Yeah, it was brilliant. By the way, the scuffles in training aren't an essential part of being successful.
They
So
might have
it's not a
been.
case of having to go out and fight and argue in training to be successful. It's not. It's just it was around, it was the way things were at that stage, and it was the way people tried to lay down a marker themselves, and a lot of the time coaches wanted a bit of niggle and stuff. And every team in GA, in soccer, rugby, a little bit of spark and bite in players, you think gets them ready. We had that, so much of that. And I think part of our success, part of that, what was a really important ingredient in that was, being able to probably have that edge within the group. And it probably stems from, responsibility. When you put on a Munster jersey, you've got to really be passionate and aggressive and determined and physical and stuff. Because I think the comparison you're talking about, and it's obviously been very respectful to the '06 group. The '08 group was probably more talented on paper, in the sense that, we had Dougie Howlett, Lafemi Maffey, Rua Tapoki, Dennis Hurley had come in at full back. Tomas had come in for Peter Stringer at scrum half. So there was changes from the team in '06. Um, a lot of there was still a core group of the forwards and stuff there, but there was a good few changes in the back. Trevor Halstead and John Kelly were the centres in 2006. Brilliant players, different players. Anthony Horgan, Ian Dowling in the wings, Sean Payne full back. Um, and we had brilliant overseas players over the years. The ones that kind of really stand out, like Woody came in 1999 as well. He was really important part of that change in professionalism. Um, Obviously, I mentioned Langford. Jim Williams was brilliant. Jason Holland was kind of not as high profile as those other players, because he came over playing with Middleton and got called in '99 when we were kind of down. We didn't have the biggest squad, and then he starts playing with Munster for years. Brilliant squad member, unbelievably talented. Um, Trevor Halstead was brilliant in '06. And then, as I said, Maffey, Tupoki, Howlett, they're a different level, really, aren't they? Because they're so elusive, those players. But I think the team in '06 was relentless as regards, the intensity that they could bring as a forward pack, particularly in around the physical exchanges of maul, scrum, breakdown, fitness, and just, you use the word relentless a lot. Relentless is like just always being there, keeping going, like the way they could recycle the ball. And we had a brilliant squad. There's lots of people who didn't get to start in those two big finals, who were an integral part of the squad and who were part of the group who were getting stuck into some training or challenging people. The start of '06, obviously over in Sale, was our first that was our first game of that pool stage, and we lost pretty significantly in that game. I ruptured my cruciate ligament in my knee. Frankie Sheehan damaged his neck. Um, both of us were looking at career-ending injuries, and we got walloped that night over in Sale. So it was a different season for me and Frankie, obviously, because I thought my career was potentially over, and I was in the middle of contract negotiations for a new contract as well. So it was a tough time, a bad start for us, and then things changed up, and we went on a great run the pool stages and beat Sale at home, won away in Cass, and ended up topping the group and getting was it Perpignan in Dublin, that quarter final,
Yeah.
and then the Leinster game, the semi final, and then a final in Cardiff. And I think certainly post Christmas, the team went on this brilliant run of a little bit of luck with the injuries, and of course Barry Murphy came on the scene that time. The tries he scored against Sale, and there was lots of young players pushing that group as well. But that run after Christmas was a brilliant run, and I remember being at the Perpignan game, and Leinster beat Toulouse in Toulouse the same day, against the odds, and then that meant Munster had a home semi final. Well, it was a home game for both teams really back then. It was going to be on the old Lansdowne Road, and I remember thinking, Jesus, we have a real chance here of potentially getting to another final, because we probably had that little bit of an edge on Leinster back then. It wasn't me being cocky or complacent, but I thought, Jesus, we have a very good chance here of beating Leinster possibly in a semi-final, and suddenly we could be in another final, and I'm going to miss it. So, obviously, I'd recovered pretty well up to that point, but I didn't think I'd play again that season. If Perpignan had beaten Munster, I wouldn't have taken a chance in coming back. But it changed my mentality that day. I remember just thinking, maybe I have a chance here if I get myself in order here. And I was training well, and the recovery had come on very well from the injury, and I made a surge back. I wasn't involved in the semi-final, but I ended up playing a couple of games with Shannon, coming on the AL final, which was weird because Anton Meany had played in and been involved in the team, and I ended up kind of ousting him out of the off the bench, and Stephen Keogh and myself both went onto the bench for Shannon, and we came on and beat Clontarf in the final. And straight away after the game, I got a medal, but it wasn't my medal. I gave it straight to Anton Meany and stuff like it. It wasn't a great consolation for him, not getting to run on the field and come off the bench himself. But I played 20, 25 minutes there. I played a half a game over in Scarlets, and 2 weeks later, I'm sitting on the bench in the Heineken Cup final in '06. I thought I'd miss out on it, and I couldn't really believe myself. I was probably the happiest substitute ever in the history of substitutes, because I was still, like, obviously I would have loved to been fit and starting the game and out in the field, but to be able to make the bench that time, and I was helped and aided by Mick O'Driscoll being able to play in the back row as well. So Miko and myself were second row, back row substitutes for that final, but Miko could go into the back row as well. So if someone of the, you know, Dennis or Axel or Wally went down injured after a couple of minutes, Miko would have been the first sub on. I wouldn't have probably been able to come on for 78 minutes in the game. But yeah, I came on for the last 4 minutes of that game, and it was special. So it was. I really sensed after that Perpignan game that I'm going to miss this. I've been around for a good while now with this group and been part of the ups and downs, and there I think we could win it this time, and that's the way it turned out. The team were so fit. they were so strong, they were mentally tough, and they were ready to win a Heineken Cup and at the time. And um, it was nervy, that final against Biarritz, I think, and you know, they got their Sorelli Bobo scoring that try, and Biarritz had a star-studded team, but I just felt that that was the day for Munster. And yeah, it was. I think you meet people along the way now, fans who were there, and it was a standout moment in their lives, not just in their sporting lives, but it was special because that incredible journey kind of culminated in finally winning it in '06. You know, going right back to '97 when Declan Kidney said, "Look, we're going to win a European Cup someday." We thought he was crazy. And it just goes to show if you get your structure right, get good characters and people who work hard, and you need talent, and you build something that it's achievable. And that's why there was such a sense of relief amongst the fans and the players, because I think if we had lost that final, it would have been so deflating that, God, are we ever going to win one here? Given the previous two finals, couple of semi-finals. There was a fair bit of disappointment there. But the good thing is, from 2000 onwards, up to that point, it was either final, semi-final. I think was it a quarter-final in '05 or semi-final? But it was very small margins there, And I think obviously going on to '08, '07 was maybe we dropped our standards a little bit, and we lost in the quarterfinal away to the Scarlets, I think. And it was, yeah, it was a tough one to take in '07, because when you're winning a European Cup and then you want to try and go again and back it up, and that's the hard thing in sport. But to respond in '08 and do it in the way we did, um, again, we lost our first game in '08 away to Wasps. Very frustrating one that we should have won. I thought we played really well, but we made some couple of defensive errors and got punished. But that was a different team as regards our the way we played and the game plan, and you know when you have Maffey and Topoki in the centre, you want to try and get the ball in their hands as much as possible. And then Doug Howlett comes in January and gave the whole group a massive lift. But it wasn't just that group culminating in winning that. So many people, like Mick Galway was captain for so many years. He would have been a kind of a leader for a lot of us. Peter Clohessy, it was unfortunate that those guys didn't get to run out onto the field, but they'd laid the foundations. Killian Keane was such an important part of the group in the early days as well, and so many others. But yeah, '08, backing it up and doing it for a second time was really special. If you were to ask me which was better for me, well, '06 in some ways, because 7 or 8 months previous, I was sitting in a dressing room thinking my career is over. So for me to run onto the field for 4 minutes and not touch the ball or not do anything in the game was, I was just incredibly proud of the commitment and dedication, the work I put in to try and get back from the injury and be part of the group. Obviously, when you go and play '08 and you play all the matches and you're involved all the way through, yeah, that was special. They were two great days that yeah, live with us forever, really.
No, absolutely. And you mentioned one man in particular who was Mr. Munster, who hoisted that trophy in 2006, Anthony Foley. You shared a dressing room with him for well over a decade. There's, between Shannon and Munster. How do you sum up a man like Axel on a personal level, but also, in the dressing room, and how much he would have done for Munster?
I always envied him, because not just because of his playing ability, but because of his calmness and his composure, and nothing really phased him, in a sense that I would be kind of at times a bundle of anxiety going out before games, and he was just so calm, relaxed, and he could just see the challenge ahead for with excitement, if you like. Very strong mentally, and I played under 20s with him, with Shannon. We became great friends. We spent a lot of time together. John Hayes, Axel, myself, and Golov were kind of very, very close, and we socialized a lot together. We went to stuff away from rugby, if you like. We played golf. Well, Hayes didn't play golf because he couldn't hit a golf club, or swing a golf club, I should say. But yeah, I would have been very close to Axel always, and he epitomized that kind of spirit and tempo of when I played with Shannon, but also with Munster as well. He was so reliable. You just knew every week he was going to turn up and be ready to do his job, and incredible talent. And great fun. He was great fun off the field. He was great crack. He loved a bit of slagging and banter. So we clicked and we got on really well together. And we had some great days. I probably bust his eardrums so many times, particularly in the earlier days with Shannon screaming and shouting when Eddie Halvey was on one side and I was on the other side of Axel. And he said it was just like this constant stereo blaring in his ears all the time. The two of us just bickering and talking and whinging and whining. He used to get a great laugh out of it. But going back to what I said at the start, I always had envy for Axel in a really positive way. I always wish I was like him. I wish I'd wished I could be as controlled and as calm as him, and see the positive light in the performance or in the challenge ahead. So I have great admiration for Axel always. We went on holidays together. We went, played lots of golf together. We socialized together, and we were always very close. And we had some great enjoyable days in our career. And for Axel to lift it in '06 was special. I would have loved to have seen Golov got to lift it in 2000, but that didn't happen. Axel lifting it in '06 just was perfect. It was just perfect, and I was right. And he finished probably the year after the end of that season, and was part of the coaching group thereafter in '08, I think. And then, obviously he took over the head coach's role in a tough period of time, and where Munster, there was some poor results and it was a difficult period that time. And, going back to what I started and talking about working the media, I was in that position of critique in Munster when Axel was the head coach. And that was, I kind of had, after they lost that game in Stade Francais and I was on Sky Sports, I just kind of, spoke about the frustration, the disappointment, and the changes that I thought needed in Munster, and a lot of it was out of frustration, and I'd kind of forgotten and I didn't personalize it in the sense that, oh God, my one of my close friends is the head coach, I can't say this. I had it all said before I realized, and then there was a can of worms opened, and the last thing I wanted to do was put any pressure on Axel at the time. I was frustrated with the structures within Munster at the time, and I thought they should have been better. And it was no critique on Axel's coaching. And he knew that because we spoke afterwards, and one of the first people I texted after that was to him, and he responded pretty quickly, and we had a laugh afterwards about it. Not straight away, because it wasn't ideal when you're involved in a team and you're involved in something close, and someone that's you're very close friends with and you played with for a long time. And it happens in a lot of sports, doesn't it? In GA and soccer, where ex-players end up critiquing a team, and it's understandable. I understand it more than ever now, that you're not going to be there's no one going to be within that group going to be saying that was really good and that was honest. Um, it's not taken too lightly. So that was a tough situation, because it was just out of frustration, really. So, and what happened, Axel, afterwards, a couple of years later, then um, yeah, it had a profound impact on all of us, really. It's shocking, and you know, you just take the rugby out of it and the effect it had on his family and friends and people close to him. And for someone so young to pass away in those circumstances was just so tragic. And yeah, we still talk about him a lot, and we recount funny stories and the joyful moments we had off the field as well, more so. He was a great character, and he was someone that was he was Mr. Munster, wasn't he? And it was incredibly tragic what happened.
No, absolutely. And what you've said is echoed what everyone else has said. We've had Johnny Holland on, we've had Paul Warwick, obviously yourself, and everyone speaks so highly of Axel, and he's definitely missed by everyone who knew him. And one of the reasons we wanted to get this show up this week is because the big clash at the weekend that we alluded to earlier. Munster returned to Croke Park, taking on Leinster again. You played there in green, you played there in red. Like, look, you won north of 200 caps for Munster. I think it was 215 or 216. Like, on a very successful team. Your Ireland career was kind of stop start. There was 3 World Cup involvements, all very mixed tournaments, for Ireland, not just for you. Do you have any regrets about your time in green? Because it was certainly a mixed bag for Ireland as well as yourself.
Yeah, of course. I would have. Yeah, I think I would have been frustrated maybe that I didn't have the confidence and self-belief that I would have had with Munster at times when I went and played and got involved with Irish squads. I didn't probably believe in myself as much. Um, I got 2 really bad injuries in my career. Obviously, the shoulder injury in Australia in 2003, when I finally kind of got to that place of being really comfortable in the in and confident in the group. And also getting really fit and strong and believing I could play at this level because I didn't always believe in myself, even though um, I, I I knew I had the talent, but I just couldn't get into that place with Ireland of getting a consistent run. And yeah, so it was yeah, I would be regretful. I remember being in South Africa in 2004 and staying on. We stayed on after the 2 tests, and I'd come back from my shoulder injury and Eddie O'Sullivan picked me on the tour, and I came off the bench in the 2 tests in South Africa, and we stayed on for an extra 2 days or something. A few of the players did, but I remember David Wallace and Paul, and myself, we were due to go home on the Sunday, and we ended up having a few drinks in Cape Town, and with the group and the bus departed to the airport. We went there and we kind of went up to the check-in desk a few times, turned back around, and did a few circles around the place that Sunday evening, and eventually, we stayed. We went home the following night, I think, or following evening. We stayed on for a day anyway, and so we went back. The rest of the group went home. There was a group of players who had stayed, so we went and met them in Camps Bay that Sunday night. To their surprise, we had stayed on, changed our flights, and we had a great night. It was brilliant. Um, and I remember waking up that Monday morning in Cape Town in a hotel in a triple room with David Wallace, Paul. I think Paul was in the middle and I was in the first bed, and the 3 of us we were a little bit ropey to say the least. And I remember chatting, going, "Wow," we were just chatting about life in general. And I think it was Paul that said, "Geez, it's unbelievable. We all have." After the weekend, we're all on 24 caps for Ireland. And I was like, Jesus, that's unbelievable. But that's typical Paul, stats, numbers, figures. He was always brilliant at that. Um, so at that point in 2004, maybe it was 23 caps, with 23 caps each, something around that. And we were all kind of laughing about it. And he threw out this stat out of nowhere when we were pretty groggy after a few pints. And I always say this and think about it, to the end of my career, I think I won 4 more caps after that. And the boys went on, Paul went on to win probably another 100 and Wally another 60 or 70. So, yeah, I could have been different for me. Yes, I was very unlucky because I did lose a fair period of time with the 2 injuries. And there was a period of time then where in that successful kind of period with Munster, the Irish team was the Munster pack and Simon Easterby. And I don't say that disrespectfully in any way, because Simon was a brilliant player. But I probably have the most training caps for Ireland ever, because I was training with Ireland back in '98 all the way to 2010. Um, so I have a lot of training caps if they were given as if there was any merit in them. So yeah, I was involved in so many squads. I didn't help myself at times. In 2002, I got sin binned when I came on for the second test in Auckland, and that kind of put me on the back foot with Eddie for another year. The big disappointment was the World Cup, really, though. Scoring the try against Argentina was obviously, I would have always said, well, if I was going to get injured, it was better that it happened with me scoring a try in such an important game rather than it happening in training behind closed doors or something. At least I achieved something in getting the injury. And Ireland, if we hadn't beaten Argentina in that game and got out of the group, I think we would have had to qualify for the next World Cup again. It would have. We reckon around the time, and it was always a joke that I saved the RFU around 15 million that time in scoring that try, single-handedly, of course. But I went to the hospital, came back, and we ended up winning the game by a point. And it was, that was a frustrating one for me. So I didn't always help myself. So I'm not trying to say I should have got another 60 caps, but I certainly should have got a few more. And if I was more consistent in my performance, or even and a little bit of luck, it took me a while to get back from both injuries to get fully fit, if you like. Um, and but look, I still count myself very lucky. I have 27 caps, and it was great to be involved. I was always very proud to play for Ireland and be involved. I went to the old Lansdowne Road as a kid, and I went to Croke Park as a kid as well, and I wanted to play in both stadiums, and kind of dream someday that it might happen. Uh, Probably more so hurl for Tipperary in Croke Park. When you think of where I come from, it's big hurling country. Nicky English was a neighbour. He was my school teacher as well, and we became great friends. So Nicky was like a god to everyone, and you didn't have to go too far to find um, you know, brilliant hurling match or hurling players or people who are passionate about hurling. So yeah, I wanted to play hurling for Tipperary, but to play in those games and play for my country and play in the Lansdowne Road and to be involved in that is stuff kind of that I'm very grateful for now. And you look back when you retire, it took me a while probably to find those positives and say, look, it was brilliant and I was really lucky. Um, but I kind of wish that I had the same swagger or same confidence when I played for Munster that I did when I went into the Ireland group. Um, but it was just different, and I think I was probably ready in 2003, and I was, even though it was kind of, I wasn't young, but I felt everyone was available. I was really fit, and if I had stayed, avoided that injury, Ireland won a triple crown a couple of months later. Um, Six Nations in '04, and it was a successful period of time for Ireland. They were challenging for the championship and winning a lot of big games. So yeah, some disappointments there, but I'm still very grateful.
No, and that's absolutely fair. And that's, as you said, there was some great times for Ireland as well. And look, we could talk about the '07 World Cup, but we'll leave that for a minute because we have to talk about Croke Park. And look, it's an amphitheater. It's the home of GEA. That '09 semi final is one of the great rugby occasions. I know the result wasn't great for Munster, but it was a great occasion. You go into that game in '09 having hammered the Ospreys, who were an unbelievable team at the time, basically made up most of the Welsh squad who won a Grand Slam the year previous. Arguably a better team than you were in 2008 at that point. How do you think Leinster managed to turn the tide that day?
I think they had an edge, and I think they had a hurt and a frustration within them. So they played with a real fear of possible failure if they didn't win, and fear of failure and anxiety and stuff. We need that sometimes to fire us up. They were obviously a good side, so they weren't, they didn't just find a performance or um, fluke it. They played very well and they had a very strong team and they were coming of age, if you like. Um, so it wasn't as if we kind of in any way underestimated them. We beat them twice that year in the league. Um, and we didn't underestimate them in any way. In fact, I think maybe we kind of overestimated and focused a lot on what they could do against us and probably lost track of of our strengths and the way we need to start the game. Again, that sounds kind of crazy thing to say, but I it's the only way I could look back at it and think we spoke about Leinster so much that week and the danger they possessed and the way they were going to come out and react. And maybe it did have an effect on us thinking about them so much and rather than trying to impose ourselves. But look, that's sport. Sometimes you can, go out with a brilliant team and just get not perform to your ability on the day, and that's not entirely down to you not performing. It's down to the opposition. They started the game well. They got an early try. I think if we look at the tries that we conceded, they're probably all preventable. There was kind of missed tackle for the first try was brilliantly executed by Leinster. Luke Fitzgerald kind of scores the try out of brilliance out of him again. So there's a bit of individual brilliance, but if we look back in the game and if you were analysing it on a Monday morning, if you were getting another crack at it, you'd be a little bit frustrated. But as a team, we were just a little bit off, and they were very much heightened in their adrenaline and their emotion, and they got it right. So you look at the stats of the game. If you looked at the stats after the game, you'd think it took out the scoreline. You'd think Munster were the dominant team because we had so much possession, so many carries, so much territory, but they just struck at those vital moments, and a few things went wrong for us. I think the Rocky Elsom tackle on Ian Dowling coming from an offside position didn't, was one of those ones that was kind of missed and went against us. And that's not, to say that we got loads of breaks and bits of luck in our day in certain games, but it was just wasn't our day. And it was Leinster's, and they fully deserved it. And it's proven in the fact that they went on to win it, and then they went and won in 11 and 12 again. So they were a very good side, and they were coming of age, and they were starting to really kind of grow and develop as a group, I think, and believe in themselves. So very small margins, because we had, and I honestly say there was under no circumstance were we any bit complacent. At no point did we really we were actually quite nervous, and I think maybe that played a part as well. So it was a big razzmatazz day in Croke Park, and it was something different. It was crazy, the amount of people that were going and all that. But Leinster, that was the start of their run, really.
And you mentioned that nervousness, that pressure, because Croke Park it's our greatest amphitheatre of a stadium. Would you have any advice for players for playing there? Because it's not just the rugby side of things. You'll have guys who would have played underage hurling and football for their local counties who would have dreamed of playing at Croke Park just like yourself.
Would I
Do you
have
think?
would I have any advice? Well, going on what happened to me in Croke Park twice, getting suspended and missing the Lions tour I remember being after that game thinking, God, I wish I was like my teammates, just disappointed about losing a game here, because I knew, our video analyst George Murray showed me the incident afterwards and said it had been played so many times in slow motion on Sky Sports, and that I knew I was in trouble, and it just had hit me there that this is more than a match. This is more than a loss of a semi-final. Um, the kind of euphoria and excitement I had for a couple of weeks previous, and I was really looking forward to going on a Lions tour. Um, yeah, it was gone. I knew it was gone, and I was in trouble. So I had this. God, I wish I was disappointed like the lads for the match, because they were heartbroken, of course, but I was probably quadruple the feeling of pain. I knew what was coming and potentially coming, so it was horrendous. So my memories of Croke Park are not good from playing out in the field there. I have some good memories going to see Tip playing there over the years. Um, but it's just to try and enjoy it, really. I think it's the same you'd say to any group of kids if you're talking to a group of kids, you'd want to try and enjoy sport. And of course, a little bit of nerves and all that are important. Leinster have been, very dominant in Irish rugby in the last 10 years, and they've been the best province. Munster bucked the trend in 23 and got that win with Jack Crowley's drop goal in the semi-final, and opened the door a sense for Munster winning that URC, which was incredible. But the squad they have and the players they have, they're in a very strong position. Um, And it's a great rivalry. It always has been. It's a special day. It's a different week when Munster and Leinster played, and I experienced that myself always. Um, Europe is a little bit different, but Leinster in the league, it is different. It's different for both of them, and derby matches in any sport are different. So yeah, I wouldn't be giving them much advice about uh, how joyful it is to play in Croke Park because it wasn't for me. But you know, um, just to try and believe in themselves, control what they can control, and you can't control the opposition, and maybe that's probably a lesson from that memory, controlling and thinking too much about the opposition. So it's how Munster turn up themselves, and Ulster have been or Leinster have been the dominant force in this fixture for a long period of time now, and so it's going to be difficult for Munster no matter what team they play. But I think even if you go back to the game, the league game last season in the Aviva, Munster, that Craig Casey try early on, the way they played against a really strong Leinster team, so they can take some hope. But you've got to beat a Leinster team nowadays. You've got to get a lot of stuff right over 80 minutes and be pretty relentless. So it's to try and enjoy the occasion as well and not get swallowed up in it.
Absolutely. And the last two games that we've seen Munster and Leinster play in Dublin have been nail biters. As you mentioned, that game, the Aviva last year, I think it was a 5-point game where Leinster scored one, both sides scored one brilliant try. Leinster scored one opportunistic one from Gibson Park, which he loves to do. Obviously, the drop goal game in the semi final was unbelievable as well. And look, hopefully we get a game fit for the spectacle that we're going to get, like the semi final in Europe last or earlier on this year. Before we go, Alan, I always like to end on a fun question. We asked Zach Ward about Sevens players, and we asked Noel McNamara about players he's coached. You've played with a lot of gnarly, tough men. I could use a couple of expletives. Gnarly, tough men in packs. You don't have to give me a dream pack, but a top five even of some of the toughest men you've played with or against.
Yeah, it's a good one. I just, in '08 when that Munster starting pack of forwards, um, it was all homegrown. It was Marcus Horn, Jerry Flannery, John Hayes, Donica, Paul, myself, Dennis, Leamy, and Wally. Um, we were very proud of. We were all kind of local. We were as a unit pretty decent. We were all well able to mix it, and all had our own strengths as well. So I just think the fitness level of that group and the enjoyment I got of playing with that group that year. And of course, there's people come off the bench and Donica Ryan and Donica was there, Mick O'Driscoll, Frankie had, as I said, we played with him for a number of years. Some great players. Peter Clohessy, you think of Claw, be hard to leave Claw to any team. But that pack of forwards was a special pack of forwards. I think if I was to pick, a couple of fellas I'd like to play with, particularly going away to France or somewhere like that in a tough place, a tough environment. Trevor Brennan had come to mind. I wouldn't mind Trevor on my shoulder if I was going into battle, or Peter Clohessy. Funny enough, the three of us have got ourselves into trouble a few times in our careers, and we're very close friends. So it probably shows the characters we are. I'd like to think all three of us are very calm people off the field, but we were a little bit abrasive on it. But yeah, that Munster pack in '08, it wasn't about, because the perception of me sometimes is that I was this filthy player who constantly got into trouble. I actually never got a red card in my career. That's one thing I can say. Anyway, which is good. I got cited twice, and I got cited three times. One against Cardiff back in '06. The '08 one, Rodney Sowialo in Croke Park as well against New Zealand. I got cited after that for a stamp on him, which the referee gave a penalty. He was standing beside me when it happened. It was a bit of a joke, that one, to be honest. And then obviously the '09 one. So I wasn't constantly in trouble, but there was a couple of, obviously the Lions one is incredibly high profile, not just in Ireland, everywhere. So the perception about uh, the game needing to be physical or anything like that, in fact, I'm the opposite when I do commentary now. I think all the stuff around head contact and high tackles and foul play is something I speak a lot about. Sometimes people say like pot kettle with me, but actually I say this, well, I'm an expert and probably giving away penalties and been involved in some of those incidents. But safety is paramount now, and I think the game is much better for it. It's not as wild, people flying off their feet, and the whole concept and idea from World Rugby is to make the game safer and make it a great spectacle. And I think we see a great spectacle nowadays. You just look at that round one game between Connacht and Munster. Like both defensive coaches would be frustrated, but it was a great game to watch and the ambition for people to play. So I think we've seen a trend in the game in the last couple of years of attack being the way forward, not trying to, kick the leather off the ball and be negative. I think people see attack as being a central part of having success in rugby now, and it's good. It's in a good place at the moment. So yeah, that pack of forwards in '08 is one that just kind of comes to mind straight away. I could add loads of, guys I played against, playing against Richie McCaw, John Olomu, Lawrence Delalio, Dan Carter. He handed me off in '08 in Croke Park. There's a picture I have of me hanging off the side of his jersey. He was an incredible player. Um, being in France, playing against some great French players as well. So many. But I do count myself lucky, and I'm lucky to be still involved in the game, and I enjoy it from where I can be now and picking up on a microphone and stuff like that. And look, I hope, I would always hope Munster win matches and be successful, and hopefully that it's 2006 and '08 is a long time ago now. The Holy Grail would be for Munster to win a European Cup at some point in the near future. Who knows? And that would be, 2020, 2023. I keep saying 2023. Sorry, 2023 was really special, and I think the coaches are doing a really good job there. Graham Rowntree done a very good job. Dennis Leamy, Mike Prendergast, Andy Kiriakou, George Murray. There's good people in there now, and there's some very good young players coming through. So there is a bit of optimism and excitement. Winning in sport is tough. It's hard, and it's the ultimate goal to try and get up on that podium and lift a trophy, but it's not always easy.
Absolutely. Can echo all that, can echo your sentiments on the safety in the game in particular as well, because we do discuss that as well. But Alan, that's all we have time for today. Thank you very much for joining me and for a really widespread interview to discuss everything. We've had an eventful career in rugby, it's fair to say, but it's been very good to chat to you. Thanks for coming on. We will have more interviews to come. We'll have a pod reflecting on the kind of the watershed moment of 2009 as a year in that semi-final as well later in the week. The Red Army podcast will preview the game in full and recap it. And then we have coverage of Ireland's November test, of which Alan will be working on for Virgin Media. So thanks home to everyone for listening. If you do like what you see or hear, please do subscribe, and you'll find the links to my channels below. But for now, and until next time, take it easy.